Hello and welcome to the stream. I am Follygon and today we are going to be doing a little bit of a look back on about the past 5 years of my work. There's this idea called the gap, the big old gap, right? And it's that space between where you are now and where you want to be. And you got this big gap in front of you. But what people often forget is that there's this huge gap behind you as well, from where you came from and where you are now. So it's kind of the new year right now. It's around that time. It's like, we're a little bit late. We're like over a week into the new year, but who's counting? It doesn't really matter. So what we're gonna do is, like I said, take a look back at the past 5 years of my work. Not all of it, obviously that would take forever, but I have about 3 or 4 pieces from each of those years that we're gonna dive in on. I'm going to critique a little bit, talk about my experience coming up through those years, and answer any questions that you guys have here live on stream. And then anything later in the VOD on YouTube and everything else. But I will give just a couple minutes here for some people to pop in and sip on my delicious chai tea that probably has a little bit too much honey in it. But I love me some honey, and I love me some chai, so I'm okay with that. I will just very quickly shout out at the beginning of my channel, if you don't know who I am Follygon. There's links below to all my stuff, but the one that I would really appreciate you checking out is my Gumroad. It's just gumroad.com/Follygon. I have some tutorials, courses, brushes, materials, base meshes, all sorts of good stuff on here. A lot of people have been asking about my curve brush that I use for creating my eyelids. I use it for hair. I use it for a bunch of different stuff. If you're interested in that, you can get that, plus a few other brushes for only $1 on here. There's a bunch of other stuff on here, like I said, courses up here at the top, and a ton of other stuff. And I would greatly appreciate it, like I said, if you guys checked it out. Even if you didn't buy anything, maybe share a link, tell a friend, tell your parents, I don't know. Alright. Alright, I think we're cool. We can go ahead and get started. We're gonna start 5 years back in 2014. And yeah, let's see. I think we're gonna start with this one. Also, a fun thing, I forgot about this completely, but all my old stuff, I don't know why or how this ended up happening, but all my old stuff from like 3, 4, 5 years ago was always flipped in ZBrush. And ZBrush actually flips stuff naturally, but it's like extra flipped. It's like flipped on the, what would that be? The X and the Y. I don't know why. I don't know why. Don't know why she swallowed the fly. But okay, so this is the first thing that we're gonna look at. This is probably one of the very first things that I ever sculpted in ZBrush. Probably about maybe my first or second week into ZBrush and digital sculpting in general. Before this, I'd done a little bit of poly modeling stuff in Maya, very minor, but I understood how to work with verts, edges, and faces and all that. You know, I knew how to box model. But yeah, essentially what we're looking at is kind of everyone's first week or so in ZBrush. And you're just trying to experiment with as many different brushes as you possibly can. There's really not a lot that I'll say here in terms of critique because, you know, there's not much good here. I think kind of my basic thought process and idea at this point was to try something simple, and honestly I should have aimed for something even much more simple than this. So I thought, you know, a character head and a bust, and I'll just get into ZBrush, and you do what everybody does on their first time. You know, you grab a sphere or a cube or whatever, and you just start like carving in on it and sculpting away. And you end up with, you know, you just hit the B key or go up into your brushes and you're like digging around and trying to find as many interesting brushes as you possibly can. And that's how you end up with something like this. What I thought was interesting about this is that I actually had a separate mesh for the eye. So I have to applaud 2014 Ben for this one, because most of the time when people start out in ZBrush, they don't really use multiple subtools, and I don't know how I even got this idea. I probably did it on accident with an insert multi-mesh brush. I probably like somehow discovered that I could insert a sphere on a mesh, and I didn't. I got lucky, is essentially what I'm saying. Most of the time you'll just see people, you know, it's that first time, you know, we'll just sculpt in with our standard brush and get our little eye. So like I said, one of the first things that I ever sculpted, for reference, if you guys don't know who I am, you guys can check out my ArtStation. There's a link below to see some of the, you know, more recent things that I've worked on. Here's my most recent character as of right now, Android 17. The original concept art, the 2D concept, is by an artist by the name of Gap, or Imathe, I think is his first name, if I remember correctly. But definitely go check out Gap and check out my ArtStation if you're interested in seeing some of my more recent works. We will eventually build up to that. We're starting from the very beginning and working our way up to present. But I think that's enough of looking at big turd boy here. Oh, and I don't know why, I thought it looked froggy. I think I was maybe aiming for some kind of frog creature. I might have missed the mark by a tad. Alright. From here, oh gosh. So the first time I opened this project, the thing that I'm opening right now, and this thing is flipped again. The first time I opened this, it was actually a ZBrush project file before I flip this around. If you guys work in ZBrush, or if you're new to ZBrush, I would highly encourage people to not go up here to File, Save As. ZBrush does not work like other programs that you're probably used to, and this is going to save a ton of other junk that you just don't need in your file. Instead, go over to your Tool menu and click on Save As over there. It will save your tool, which is what these little icons are. If you click on these are called tools or objects. Tools in the language of ZBrush, and everything within that tool is a subtool. But let's go ahead and take a look at our Blasty Blast here. And we got this delicious material on here that I'm not sure what it is. It looks like some kind of matte cap skin or of some kind. I'm not really sure. I think it actually might be one of these. This was when, you know, I was trying to... God, I don't even know. I obviously trying to make a Blastoise, and what's interesting here is I think I did this after I did that little frog sketch. I did use separate subtools for the barrel of the gun, or his water cannon. This was much before the Z Modeler brush came out in ZBrush, which is a poly modeling tool. So to do hard surface stuff in ZBrush back then, it was a lot more difficult. Obviously, everything is just kind of one big old pulled out mesh here. There's a ton of stretching going on. The poly paint is all over the place. The material choice is awful. Even if we just turn that off completely and just use my, you know, clay sculpting material that I've created that I work with normally, there's oh my gosh, this is all over the place. There's not much good here other than I could, you know, by looking at it I can recognize that this is trying to be a Blastoise. But yes, the lack of multiple subtools and working with multiple objects and parts is probably one of the most kind of workflow changing moments for me in those early stages. I think when people first start getting in there, they're really trying to just kind of sculpt up as many shapes as they can, and they try to get, I would say people try to get a little bit too into the artsy side before they learn the technical side, and that's, I think, very apparent here. Alright, let's check out what we got. But you can still tell it's Pikachu, that's right. What's going on, Polyswoop? How you doing? We are going through the past 5 years of work, starting way back in 2014. This is from about mid-2014. There's a little bit of a skill jump here, for sure, but there's obviously, it's quite messy, it's all over the place. We're still using, you know, one piece of geometry, one mesh for everything. So, you know, it's not split up into separate parts. I could have done separate tusks, separate eyes, or you know what? I do have separate eyeballs in there. So I did carry that knowledge forward. But there's just a lot on here. Where's my pen? It's always in my lap when I can't find it. There's just a lot in here that's really messy, kind of all over the place. If we look at the ears and how I extruded these, first of all, they're terrible, but also for some reason, you know, I got this huge dip in and pull in there on the neck, which is pretty atrocious. And this is something that happens, I talk about this on my stream quite often, but this is something that happens when you don't look at your sculpt or your 3D model from multiple angles enough. So you know, let's say this looks decent enough from the front, okay? So we're sculpting around, we're doing great, and then we just totally forget to look up here. So I highly encourage people to look at their models from the top down and the bottom up view and just 3/4 everything you can possibly imagine or think of. Same here with like the mouth and everything. This is just like so messy. I obviously just carved in here with a damn standard brush, and I didn't even know how to use lazy mouse at the time, all that good stuff. I'll reiterate for those, it looks like we got a few more people in here that are joining us. Oh man, these ears are so thin and gross. But yeah, today we are going through all of, not all of my old work, but about 3 or 4 pieces from each year for the past 5 years. So maybe around like 20 different pieces today. And just to make sure that we don't just overload our quick save file, I'm gonna blast this all the way up to 600 so that we don't have any quick saves during this time. So if we crash, we don't get a huge file loaded off somewhere. Beckert, what is going on, dude? How are you doing? Welcome back. All right. So that's our grody little elephant. In terms of actual improvements here, since I think this is actually heading in a good direction, we could do a small sculpt over of something like this. The main thing that I would recommend, if you are someone that is in kind of these early stages of trying to figure out, here, you know what, I'll work on 1/2 of this elephant. If you're in those early stages of trying to figure out how to work on your model and just get into an area where things can be a little bit more clean, try to figure out how to use your selection brushes. That's Control and Shift, and you can switch your selection brush up here. I'm specifically using the selection lasso, and I'm going to use that to split off this little tusk shape. Today's going to be a little bit less on the technical side, guys. I'm going to be just kind of talking about different ideas, so I'm not going to be talking about all the tools that I normally use. If you guys do have anything specific in terms of questions or anything, tools that I use, just let me know, and I will try to explain a little bit better. Tatami, what's going on, man? Good to catch you again. Thank you, I appreciate it. Welcome back. Today we're going back through the ages to see what we can find here. So yeah, splitting objects off. That is one of the first things that I highly encourage people to do. And then with that kind of new split there, we can start to really clean up and refine the shape of all these individual pieces. So this tusk, we can start simplifying the form, making it look a little bit more tusk-like, and then maybe add some new subdivision levels to that so it's not so broken and kind of all over the place. Same thing with the ear back here. You could split this off, or you could use some combination of masking to, you know, either pull that area out or just kind of fill in this area. Again, trying to look at that top-down view to find out where those terrible mistakes are. And yeah, I mean, in terms of the texture and form on this, there's really a lot of room for improvement. If I remember correctly, this is from during the first year when I started using ZBrush. I did 100 days of digital sculpting where every single day I tried to create something new. I was really aiming for quantity over quality. One, because I couldn't achieve quality, and two, because putting in that time and reaching those hours are so very important in those early stages. And, you know, continue to be important for me and every other artist in the world. But I found that during that time, just keeping things rough ended up making them look better, because if I tried to make it clean and look good, it just ended up being obvious that, you know, all that dirtiness is purposeful. But when I tried to make it clean, it was like, wow, that just looks absolutely terrible and not like an elephant or not like, you know, whatever. Very cool stream idea. Well, thank you. Yeah, I thought it would be fun to you know, show some humble beginnings and such. Everybody starts from the same place. These ears are also just so thin and disgusting. There's a lot of stuff that I could do back here to thicken these up and really get these to a better level. A lot of form just needs to be cleaned up here. But yeah, unless anybody has any additional specific questions about this, I think we'll move on to the next thing, which is a giant file. I had no idea how big this thing is. The thing that I'm about to open... What's going on, Hawk? Welcome back, man. The thing that I'm about to open is, I think, a little bit over 60 million polygons, which, for my machine right now, that's not really a huge deal. I think some of the biggest files that I've ever worked on were around like 150 to 200 million, right around there. And some stuff for a Disney project. But this, for 2014 on my computer back then, had to just be grinding it to a halt and destroying it. This was actually, so this was one of the last things that I made in 2014. It might have actually been the very last thing that I made in 2014. I believe there was a tutorial that I followed with this on, I can't remember the tutorial site. It wasn't Linda. I can't remember it, but maybe some of you recognize the similar project. There is some poly paint on here, and most of the 60 million polys that are present here are because of the fibers, the fiber mesh. There's fiber mesh all over this thing. It's absurd. And I'm also using that terrible, what is it, matte cap skin material as well. One of these matte cap skin materials, something in here, which just looks terrible as well. But I was very, very proud of this at the time. This was like the coolest thing I had ever done. I was like so proud that I made something that kind of resembled like a tree or wood or a rock. And I was like, yeah, I'm doing it. I'm doing the 3D thing. We're getting there. But yes, obviously there's just, it's very messy, right? It's all over the place, and there's a reason that this is like 60 million polys. I was like, you know, I can't make it look super great, so I'm just going to confuse your eye. I'm not going to give you anything specific that you can look at. You're just going to be like constantly scanning, trying to figure out what's happening here. Hawk, thank you for the host. I appreciate it, dude. Opened your ZBrush Tut and downloaded ZBrush today. Awesome, dude. Congrats. Welcome to the club. Looking forward to trying it soon. Awesome. As I always tell everybody, feel free to shoot me an email if you have any questions about, you know, anything in ZBrush, or if you get stuck anywhere. You weren't kind to your computer back then. That's right, I was not. There's also some like stuff poking through down here. I do vaguely remember this. We could try to do a very quick render on this because fiber mesh looks, quote, better when you actually get that render going. But because this is 60 million polys, I'm not going to mess with the shadows or anything. Let's just see how long this takes to do a quick render. Actually, 60 million polys wouldn't take that long to do a BPR render with the default settings for your shadows and ray count, which I believe is like 15-ish or something like that. It's very low. But the reason this is going to take such a long time to render is, again, because of all the fiber mesh going on for this character. This tree, what did I call it? A like tree forest spirit or forest tree spirit. Very clever of me. But as long as we don't have any questions, and as soon as this is finished tinkering away up here, we can maybe look at the next thing. Essentially, I think I used fiber mesh for the moss down here. For some of these mushrooms, I created a custom insert multi-mesh brush. And at this time, if I remember correctly, I was still using Z-spheres for almost everything. So all of these vines, these tree branch shapes, all of that was done with Z-spheres. And ZBrush has just like totally said no to this. We'll give it a second to try to catch up. We'll get rid of the spinning wheel of death. But I learned a couple years later that Z-spheres are terrible. No offense to the people that still use them. I have seen great stuff come out of Z-spheres. But I think they're kind of in my opinion, you know, a little bit of an older deprecated method, that there are a lot easier ways to get the form that you're looking for just using Dynamesh and a move brush and just kind of pulling some form out. I find that to be really easy, really quick. And if you guys want to learn more about that, I have a ton of free tutorials on my YouTube channel, as well as a bunch of stuff on just my stream. If you guys want to come and hang out, ask questions, and see how I work live. But yeah, there we go. There's some of the fibers actually rendered with the just very, very low resolution default rendering settings, and that took quite a while just for that. And we even got some skipped frames during that process. So that's great for the stream. Looks impressive. Oh no, please don't say that, please. I was very proud of this at the time. Oh, and thank you for the bits there, Hawk. I appreciate that, man. Do you know if you can stream to Twitch on a Surface Pro? Not sure if it has a camera. I believe that the Surface Pros, depending on which version that you're using, the Surface Pro probably does have a camera, but I'm not sure if you can use that in conjunction with streaming for like OBS, if you could like get that to work, plus run ZBrush, like camera, ZBrush, and streaming all on a Surface Pro. I don't know how powerful they are. I'm sure there's like a top-of-the-line version that you could probably do that on, but, you know, I don't know. If you have one, maybe try it out. I do not have a Surface Pro, but I would love to get one of those, or maybe a Mobile Studio Pro at some point in the future. All right, guys, that is 2014. Beautiful, amazing, I know. We started off 2014, one of the first week or two things, just experimenting with a crazy amount of brushes, and then a big old garbage monster of a Pikachu. Thank you who recognized that this was a Pikachu. Oh, Polyswoop. Polyswoop knew immediately. So Pikachu, then a terrible elephant sketch, still kind of working with single subtools, all that good stuff, going all over the place, very messy. Yeah. And then this thing, this giant monstrosity of polygons, which we are going to delete because ZBrush is not enjoying all those fiber mesh pieces. So yeah, I think I'm just going to turn off ZBrush and open it back up, or just do a initialize. But when you initialize ZBrush, we'll let it do it. This, I believe this sets it back to its factory settings. Does it still? Sometimes it gets rid of my menu. It looks like it held on to it. It looks like we still have some undos. It's a little disconcerting. But let's grab a sphere, as we do. I just like to have something on screen. And then let's go ahead and load up what's going to be our first sculpt from 2015. All of these are OBJs, so I need a piece of geometry to import these on top of. So let's see here, what is going to be first for 2015? I don't have very many from 2015 that I imported in here, only a couple. And we got some floating verts that are not used, so good job me. We'll just say always yes. It's asking if we want to delete any unused vertices. I'm just saying yeah, go ahead, delete them. Oh, this isn't even the posed version. That's okay. It gets the point across here. Let's see, let's run in auto groups. I think this might even be decimated. It looks like there are some separate pieces of geometry, but this is kind of early, I think, to mid 2015, probably in like the first or second quarter of 2015. And this is definitely after my 100 days of doing daily sculpts and getting in on all that stuff. And this is when I felt like, oh yeah, you know, I'm starting to figure this out. Figure out how to make some interesting textures. But, you know, a lot of this is perfectly symmetrical. There are just some absolutely terrible forms, not only in the hands. These are probably like one of the worst offenders. I really had trouble figuring out how to pull out long shapes or spikes or anything like that, which I think is pretty obvious here. I don't know why my phone keeps freaking out on me. Here. I found out how to turn off Siri because she was freaking out during the last stream. There we go. All right. So, you know, lots of problems with a lot of pulling out of the shapes, and that stems from not working with multiple subtools. This is still all one giant mesh that I worked on at once. And the main problem with this is, first of all, it makes it really hard to create specific forms. And second off, if you're working on one shape on top of something, like you're pulling out a spike, and I believe I was working with, like, it actually doesn't matter if you're working with Dynamesh or clean topology or ZBrush topology, you're going to have to update topology anytime you pull and stretch anything out from something else. So when you do that, you're not just updating that, but you're updating everything else that's affected by that. So all this stuff up here, you know, it's just pulled out with a snake hook brush. That was pretty much the only way I knew how to do it. Just grab a snake hook brush and pull out your little spiky shape, and there you go. You got a spiky, and now you can like sculpt on that a little bit more. One thing I was also using a lot back then, if you guys are familiar with some of the clay brushes in ZBrush, let's see here. I was using the clay buildup and the clay tubes brush a lot back then, and I would turn off the alpha and just sculpt away with some of these. Let's see. Let's go back to our sphere, just so we can see how this brush works real quick. Whoops. Please go back. So the clay buildup brush, it's a pretty simple brush, but the thing that I don't like about it now, the reason I don't use it, is that you can continue to sculpt and build up and build up and build up form forever. And you can do that without realizing how deep your actual mesh is extruding or protruding there. But yeah, instead I use a little bit of a variation on the clay tubes brush now. This is available on my Gumroad. There should be a link below. It comes with all my brushes that I use. This is just a lot cleaner version. It only builds up to a certain level, and the stroke is consistent no matter how leggy you're getting or how fast you make the stroke. But yeah, what else can we say about leggy here? Tatami says that he never uses the Z-spheres anymore. Well, good for you. I'm proud. I applaud that. When I opened ZBrush, I was like, what the heck? So different from Fusion 360. Yeah, if you've never played with ZBrush, or you know, people are very new here, that's entirely why I made that ZBrush Quick Start course. I don't want to keep shouting out my Gumroad, but it's that top right one when you go to my Gumroad, which I think you picked up, Hawk, you said. Just because ZBrush is so different from any other 3D modeling software, really from any other software altogether. So there's a pretty steep learning curve in those beginning stages, and that's, you know, why I encourage people not to think of it like you would think of Maya, or what did you say, Fusion, or you know, Max, or anything else, or Blender, or I know Blender has some sculpting tools. It's just very, very different, and once you figure out how it works, it's going to be frustrating in the beginning, but once you kind of get into the sync of things, I promise that it does get easier. Cool. Well, let's move on from Laggy Boy here and take a look at our next model, which I will just import over top of this sphere. This was something that I did towards the end of 2015. Oh boy. That's a big one. We'll give it a second to import. So this was, gosh, I'm trying to think what I was doing around this time. Really, if I remember correctly, towards the end of 2015, this was right when I was getting to a place where I was feeling a little, you know, Dunning-Kruger confidence, where I was starting to apply to a bunch of companies and trying to wiggle my way in. I was doing some freelance work at the time, but really not a lot. Just kind of picking up whatever I could find on like Reddit or anything else. And Alpha 48 rocks. Is that what the back texture was for the Lagiacrus that I sculpted there? I would not doubt it. 2 unused vertices. That is okay. Oh, you know what? That's unfortunate. This is the exploded version. That's my bad. So this is an exploded version that I made of this orc character. I probably cannot expose this. Let me see if I can find... I do have the low poly version. I did find that. Let me import that really quick while I look for the... Ooh, crap. Yeah, there we go. So let me see if I can find the higher poly. You know what? It's fine. It doesn't really matter. It's still the same. But on this guy, we can even add a couple subdivs. It's not like there's a lot of high-res detail on here. I have no idea why I did this, but for some God knows why reason, I put all these like terrible snake-like braids down here underneath his chin, and they just look absolutely terrible. They just look like worms growing out of his chin. I had fun with this character, and I was trying to go for some kind of like World of Warcraft orc, and I think one of the biggest offenders of, you know, other than, you know, texture and some of the form is pretty sloppy, and this brow looks terrible, and, you know, in terms of proportions, I think it's okay because you can kind of get away with a lot when you're aiming for stylization. But there's definitely some proportional changes I would have made here. I would make here now. But one of the biggest things that really offends me about this is how I didn't make the objects interact with each other very well. So for his piercings, for some of the like rings in his tooth, this was at a point where I was starting to work with multiple subtools, and I think there's an obvious like jump in terms of, you know, I would say in terms of quality, in terms of just having the control that you have when you start using multiple subtools. We also got that terrible, same thing going on with the hair up here at the top of the head. Big old thing of worms splaying out there. Some spittle, that's fun. But once you start working with multiple subtools, kind of the next step of that process, working with all these multiple objects, is doing what I did here with the teeth, which is getting those to interact a lot better. I actually did a render of just like the teeth and just the teeth, just the gums, and like the spit flying out, and that was like one of my most popular pieces that I had ever uploaded. And it's because at that time, you know, I was starting to use multiple subtools. I had these, you know, somewhat interacting a little bit better, and I rendered it decently, which is something that we won't be talking about today. We're just looking at sculptural form. The texture on the face here, it's all over the place. The geometry here is pretty poor in general, sculpturally, and if this was ever anything for animating, which it's absolutely not. It's just a little high res. It looks like, if I remember correctly, I might have used some like base mesh from somewhere else. I'm not really too positive. I would guess that that is the case, based solely on the fact of how stretched a lot of this geometry is in the ears and the mouth. But yeah, he was fun to work on. We can maybe jump on up to 2016 now. Did need to find time to sit down to watch / listen. Yeah, for sure, man. It just like kinked my neck there. That didn't feel great. It definitely takes some time to get into. There be expecting, I would say, some frustration. But absolutely, feel free to always hang out, ask questions, and there are tons of people that hang out here in chat that are also very knowledgeable. My hotkeys and preferences are messed up. That's what's wrong there. All right, let's move on to 2016. This time I'm just gonna close ZBrush up, reopen ZBrush, and we can see what we get here. Where to begin? I gotta figure out the order of these and try not to get blinded by my monitor. I have, it looks like, 3 different things that I imported from 2016. We've looked all the way back at 2014, then 2015, and now to 2016. Let's start with this. So at this point, I was working full-time in studio. I had a job. What is this? Why are you not the high-res version? Oh, you are. Here. A quick, fun little trick in ZBrush. If you go into the Subtool Master, which is up in your Z plugin menu under Subtool, under Subtool Master, you can click on a button that says High-Res Visible. And any subtools that you have that are visible, you can bump up to the highest resolution very quickly. So I will do that very quick. I'll just run through all those, make sure we're on the highest resolution. It looks like I got a weird chrome material applied to the eyeball, or it's a material that I had that is no longer in ZBrush, that is gone now. But yes, this was for a 3D printing project that I can actually show you guys the breakout of as well. Let's see here. We'll just, yeah, we'll go with the ZBro. You know what? We'll just, here, let's turn off the poly paint. So I was also very proud of this piece at the time. I feel like it's very stiff, and I should have gone a lot wider on the body proportionally. You know, we're trying to go for like this big weighted frog, and he's sitting back on his haunches. And this is absolutely a product of, you know, just working from one view a lot and not stepping back and looking at the bigger picture. And it's really hard to see this kind of stuff when you're in those earlier stages. I was also getting into like hard surfacey type modeling and trying to figure out how to do some of that. I believe at this point the Z Modeler brush had come out, so I was probably just kind of in the infancy of playing around with that and figuring out how that works. But yes, the Z Modeler brush is awesome if you guys don't use it or do not play around with it. In terms of just the head, I remember working on this for a long time. If I can find very quickly the folder for this, which I have just found. Let me see. We got some work in progress images of where this started. So at this point, I was already starting to get into the same kind of blockout process that I use now, which is breaking stuff up into multiple forms, multiple pieces, trying to just like simplify shape and form and get a little bit more broken up. And then we got some more here as I started to create some armor pieces in the weapon. And at this point, I would say that my workflow and process was pretty similar to what I do now. There are some differences in terms of like how I would break something like this up. I definitely don't think I would have split this up into so many parts and pieces in the body. Instead, I would have focused on just the larger shape first, which is something that I really should have done. But yeah, all the way up, there's a couple more whip images, but we don't need to go through all of them. Just wanted to show you guys kind of how I started, you know, getting into that process at that point. It's all freaking miles better than me using only Dynamesh. I wasn't only using Dynamesh. I believe at this point I had also started using my current workflow of using Dynamesh plus ZRemesher. I didn't use ZRemesher as much as I do now, back then, as I do now, is what I mean to say. But I was starting to like get into that process. So there are some subdivs here. This is polygrouped in such a way so that I can, you know, mask this and open this up and, you know, be able to work on individual areas. So if you guys have seen me use the process for how I sculpt mouths now, I was kind of doing a similar thing back then. But yeah, so really kind of starting to figure out my process at this time. There's definitely, you know, a lot of changes that I would make to this if I were to go back and redo it. But I think I want to show you guys, hopefully this breakout is the correct file. If you're not familiar with breakouts or what exactly that means, I actually wasn't super great at doing breakouts back then, but I was kind of in the infancy of figuring out how to set up files for 3D printing. Oh my goodness! JM Guevara Art, thank you so much for the subscription, not the follow, but for the subscription. I really appreciate that. JM Guevara subscribing with Twitch Prime. Thank you, dude. So the process here, if you guys have never done breakouts for 3D printing, depending on, you know, scale, depending on a few things for how you want to position something in the 3D print bed, depending on if you're using FDM, SLA, SLS, whatever. You know, there are some different options here. For this, I actually ended up having to split this in half into 2 additional parts for the top and bottom half of the body here, because it didn't fit in the tiny SLA bed that we had at the scale that we were printing, so I had to chop this up. I actually have some of these parts in my closet back here that I could like dig up really, really fast. I never finished this print because it ended up breaking and it kept failing, so I just ended up saying screw it. But very quickly, let me see. The secret closet, what do we got in here? Got a bunch of old 3D printed junk in here, but let me see. Here's one SLA piece that failed from a really old thing, just to show off a couple of the prints I was doing back then. So that's an SLA print of a little like alien kind of head I sculpted. There was a body as well, which is in here somewhere, but that's not important. What we want to see is our Froggy board. I got so much junk in here. So here is part of that frog, and there you can see the giant failure right in the middle. He was also hollowed out in such a way to save on material. It's also a very, very popular thing to do. Here are a couple of his little weapons that you can see up there. One of these is in Formlabs Hard. I can't remember the name of the resin, but it's like their harder resin. It's a really crappy material. Don't use it. Just use their basic resin. It's really good. But yeah, that's that. Here we go. Here's the body for that. The head was printed in SLA because we had some extra material laying around, and the little stand was just FDM PLA plastic that I primed really quick. I never ended up priming the head because it failed, and I was going to reprint it and never did. But yeah, there are a couple of those, a couple other junky 3D prints in here that we don't need to look at. But yeah. Let's go back to our little Froggy boy. It's Marmot. What is going on? Where can we find your UI or your shader? My material, UI, brushes, etc. are all available on my Gumroad, gumroad.com/Follygon. There's a link down below. UI, my main custom brushes that I use. I got some other curved brushes on here for like $1, materials for a few bucks, and some other base meshes, courses, etc. that you can check out there. Gumroad/Follygon. The baked apple smelling goodness. Some of our PLA smells like baked goods when printing. I've never experienced that. I would not be huffing those fumes though, especially for ABS. ABS is well known to be poisonous. Yeah, let's move on from here. So we're still in 2016. Let's see, what do we got here? Blonde Bust number 6. Ooh, that's a nice little material breakup there. We'll just do black and white. So this actually somehow got me on, if I remember right, the front page of ArtStation for maybe like a few hours or something like that. I was like blown away. I didn't understand why, and I still don't. I guess I rendered it in such a way that it was, I did like a nice clay render really quick in Keyshot. That's all you have to do, guys. If you have a terrible looking 3D model or sculpt, you can just render it in Keyshot with a nice like AO clay setup, and you're good to go. But yeah, you know, this is when I was starting to try to get into sculpting stylized characters, more human characters, I should say. So we got a little bit of a face here. It looks like I have two things of hair that I tried to make, so there were multiple versions of that I like blended together. I think this was just sculpted using some dam standard and some move brush to pull out. So there are a few different versions of that I was kind of experimenting with. I was trying to figure out how to do some other stuff here. It's just very obvious how I lacked control over my polygons. Unlike now, I'm a master at controlling those polys. Not really, but I am I'm much better at controlling my form now. But yeah, you know what? I would say that there are some good things happening in this face, but overall, the shape of the eyes I kind of hate, the shape of the brows I kind of hate, size of the mouth, and just from the profile, things really start to look squashed and kind of break down. Ears are really big, but they're not really seen in the final image, so I guess it doesn't matter. This was created from a 2D concept by somebody else, and unfortunately I don't remember who that was. So I would love to give them a shout out. For some of the more recent stuff I do remember the artist, but for this one I do not. ABS is crap. Yeah, it kinda is. PLA is as clean as plastic can be. I do like me some PLA. Another question, when I open my ZBrush, you know, my area for work is small again and again. I change the width and the height. So your problem is that when you open ZBrush, your work environment, your document, is too small. What you need to do is, this is the easiest way to fix it. Come up to Document, or here, just to show you, so that you can see this. We'll make our document width and height really small and click on Resize. So here's our document. It's really tiny, right? We can't really work on this. How the heck am I going to work on that? That's it's impossible to see. So what you need to do is click on Document, W Size, and then click on New Document, and just click on No. And then that will fill in your frame here. And then after that, click on Save as Startup Document, and you will never have that problem again. And it's just that easy. Any other questions before we move on? And then when you close it, it clears your changes. That's what that last button will do. That last button will save the startup document. That'll fix it all for you. Open a sphere and import your mesh. Well, if you open a sphere, that still doesn't change the size of your document. Still need to click that update button. Here we have another one. This was made in November of 2016, so one of the last things that I did in 2016. I did this for an art competition. Let me try to zoom out because it's a little bit hefty, a little bit big. And I was trying to create an entire environment and create like a story and scene, etc. So this was for an XMD art challenge. There's this, I don't remember the dude's name, but he's got like a website called XMD. They got a bunch of brushes and stuff on there that you might use like once in your life that, in my opinion, aren't worth purchasing, but he's a cool dude and he's got a lot of free content as well. So yeah, you know, I was trying to play around more with the Z modeler brush, get into some hard surface modeling, doing, I think, some pretty cool work up here with like this filigree stuff, which was, if I remember correctly, made with an alpha on a plane and then extracted. So if you find an alpha image that you like a lot, you can use that method, project it on a plane, and then extract that information. If I were to do this today, there are a lot of things that I could do to make this a lot more clean, but I think for a few years ago, this is pretty good. You know, 2016 Ben was probably pretty proud of some of that hard surface stuff. And then flowing back here, if I remember correctly, there was like a what's that? What is the outer space movie with HAL 3000? The all-seeing robot eye on the ship that ends up, spoiler alerts, killing everybody. This movie's pretty old. It's not 2001: A Space Odyssey. You guys know who I'm talking about? HAL 3000? The all-seeing robot eye. What movie is this? Oh, it is A Space Odyssey. Well, never mind. If you guys haven't read 2001: A Space Odyssey, I don't think it's aged very well, but it's still a good book. It's a cool read. But yeah, that's it for the environment, I would say here. There's supposed to be like this all-seeing eye, and then I was trying to do like this Art Deco kind of thing where she was being held against her will. There's that stuff. The all-seeing robot eyes back there. We can toggle all this off and look at just the character here so that we can actually zoom in properly. What is that little floaty up there? Alright, we'll try to toggle off all this stuff. Alright, so in terms of, you know, some of the stuff here in the face, I think is, this was probably the best face that I had done at the time. Julie's art, but thank you, appreciate it. For those that are just joining us, we're kind of going back through the ages, looking at some old work. If you want to see where we started back in 2014, this video will be up on my YouTube channel tomorrow. Thank you, Meister. No problem. Marmot. No problem at all, man. Yes, 2001. Garden 1. There's a sequel, though. I have seen the book. I have not read the book. I do know of it. Maybe a stupid question, but when I start, I always got the basic material, but I want your material when I buy it, so how can I start with your material? In your materials selection, there is a button that says Save as Startup Material. Just select your material and click on that bad boy. So this was, for those that are just joining us again, we're going back through, looking at some old work, and coming up to where we are in the present. We're in 2016 right now. At the time, this was probably the best face that I had done. I was kind of experimenting with like hand painting some eyes and some other stuff here. But I wanted most of the work that I did to be on the face, and also I wasn't super great at sculpting and controlling form, so I didn't even do the full body. I just kind of hid most of it behind this this cloth. I didn't even sculpt her other hand. I think even some of this, yeah, it's just deleted in here, and some of that's even missing as well. But yeah, just trying to create something a little bit more visually interesting. I did this a lot with hair back then because I didn't really know any other better ways to create hair, and it just got really messy when, in all actuality, it probably would have been better for me to just take something like this and merge it all together with like Dynamesh or something like that. I don't know why that's freaking out. For the scale that this is at and the Dynamesh resolution, this should take like 5 seconds. But yeah, you know, a decent, 12 million poly scene, that's really not that big. I think there are some good things happening in the face. I think to correct a lot of what I don't like about this now, I would try to get rid of a lot of the hard forms, the sharp edge transitions that we see, because a lot of this ends up making things look more masculine. Hard, sharp edges typically do that. In feminine faces, we like to see nice, soft transitions. So maybe a quick look at something like that would just be coming through, starting to smooth out some of this stuff, probably making the nose less of a feature as well. So getting that mask brush and pulling back on some of that, you know, trying to find a little bit of a nicer silhouetted form, and then continue to just work on this transitioned area around here. Ear is kind of ginormous as well, but you know what, we'll just leave that how it is. For the hair, look how that Dynameshed, that's so weird. And we're getting a quick save, which we don't want. Rendering right now makes your PC run at half a frame a second at times. Oh god. That's not good. Where's our preferences quick save? Let's see. You are not stupid. There's no such thing as a stupid question. Don't feel bad about it, man. There was a movie sequel as well. Oh god. First 2001: A Space Odyssey. Yeah, at half a frame. Oh god. That's fun. So yeah, this just got like really, really messy. But anyway, the entire purpose of me Dynameshing that was to show that, you know, this is probably fine to work on as a singular mesh, get it all, you know, working together, and then start sculpting on top of that to get our additional texture and form. So I think even just like softening some of this form over here really helps to get that to, you know, start heading in a more feminine, feminine direction. I have some textures on there, so we can't really look at. Let's turn that off. Texture map off. So another thing that I would do, just kind of looking at this from a really extreme angle here, helps me to see what's going on. I can just tell from the front view, but the inner corner of this eye is pushed in really far, pushed in deep into the skull, and it makes your face, there are a lot of things that you can do with your eyes to mess them up, but eyelid order is one of those things that I talk about quite often. So looking at this from the side view, what we end up seeing is that that eye corner here is a little bit too close to this one. So we would probably want to do some work to really pull that out from that back area as well. What ends up happening from just like, for an example, what you want to see is that top eyelid hit first, then the bottom eyelid, inner corner, outer corner. Here, we're not seeing a lot of that. So we'd want to correct that, bring that back a little bit, and also just like work on the shape of the eye. I'm not sure why I have this really strong S-curve in there. I don't like the way I did the lashes or the brows there. They definitely need some additional work. But yeah, you know what? This was back when I was trying to figure out style that I liked, and I didn't really, you know, I was still kind of just experimenting, playing around, figuring stuff out. And I hand painted those eyes and painted the highlight on there. This would probably look a little bit better with just a quick material swap. Maybe not. It doesn't look like it wants to change. Oh, you know what? I think I have a texture map on the eyes as well. That's okay. We won't worry about it. All right, so from here, let's go ahead and move on from 2016 into 2017. Just bought the beginner's guide, or your beginner's guide. Thank you for everything. Well, no problem, Marmot. God, is there any way, does anybody know, really quick? Thank you, Marmot, I really appreciate that. As always, shoot me an email if you got any questions or get stuck anywhere, and I would be happy to help you out. Does anybody know in Twitch, is there a way to make it so that usernames are not like so freaking dark? There's like an option somewhere, I remember, where you can readable colors. I have that checked and it's not working. I don't know. I'll play with it later. Francisco, what's going on, man? Welcome back. To Tommy, welcome back as well. How far along was this? This was in the end of 2016. The end of 2016. So we started in 2014, and we looked at 2015, 2016, and now we are heading into 2017. Oh boy. Alright. Let's move on. Where to begin in 2017? In 2017, that is... So in 2016, I was doing a little bit of streaming on my... Oh man, this material's all sorts of messed up. So in 2016, towards the end of 2016, I was doing a little bit of streaming here and there. It was on a different Twitch account, not even this one. Why is this so crazy? Here. Fill material. This will fix it. So, I was doing a little bit of streaming back then, but then I started to upload a couple things to YouTube. Now I have a ton of different free tutorials and stuff on there that you guys can check out. Ton of old streams that we've been doing for the past while that have been uploaded on there as well. But I was trying to do just some like quick little studies. This is by Piper, a 2D concept by Piper Thorbidou, I believe. It's the dude that has been doing daily digital paintings for like 2,000 or 3,000 days. It's like some ridiculous number of days. But if you guys don't know who Piper Thorbidou is, definitely check him out. I believe, I'm trying to remember what it is, Cryptid Creations. I believe it's Cryptid Creations. That's off the top of my head, so I would look up Piper Thorbidou. That is his name. But yeah, I love Banjo-Kazooie, so just did like a fun little cartoon-style Banjo-Kazooie. At this point, you know, I would say that in terms of my workflow, I had figured things out. I like the way I work. It was just a matter of kind of refining that and getting better at that workflow. What was your first paid job? Probably, or my first paid job, like for 3D, or just like my first paid job in general. My first paid job was, in general, was doing soccer refereeing for 6-year-olds. I barely got paid at all, and I think I might have been like 15 or 16 or something. I don't know. Maybe even younger. What streaming software are you using? I use OBS, Streamlabs OBS. Their chatbot makes it easier to view names. I'm not a huge fan of chatbots, but thank you. I will definitely look into that. Anything to help out would be great, but I am using Streamlabs OBS. That is awesome. Loving this one. Well, thanks, Julie. Zofo, appreciate it. Tutorial got subtitle. Your tutorial got subtitle because I'm French. Pathetical English. I'm not sure. Not sure what you're asking, Marmito. If there's any way that you can, because you are French, if there's any way that you can... subtitles. I think you're right, Beckert. No, it does not have French subtitles. I do not speak French. My first paid 3D job. Probably a freelance job that I did... The first one that I can think of, like way back, was doing a freelance gig for some dude that wanted me to sculpt him and his 2 daughters, and then set it up for 3D printing. And I did it for really cheap. I mean, that was the whole point, you know. But he did pay, and he liked the work, and it's terrible. I mean, this was like in 2015, 2016, back when we were looking at some of those really terrible, like that Lagiacrus and Orc stuff. So back during that era. That was probably one of the first like 3D things that I got paid for. Streamlabs chatbot is not a bot, it is a software. Super helpful. Well, thanks, Danielitis, maybe. I will check it out. Like this, the HUD for Streamlab. Ooh, all right, I'll write this down, just so I can check it out later. Thanks, man. Appreciate that. All right, let's move on from BK Banjo-Kazooie here. In terms of like critiquing this, there's a lot that I would change because I was trying to do these fast and they were a little rushed at this time. So there's a lot of stuff that's just kind of floating, not connected. Things are done very quickly and unfinished down here, but it gets like the overall feeling and theme across. In terms of like remodeling some of this stuff, there's definitely some changes I would do to like how I created some of this stuff. But yeah, let's move on. We've looked at Banjo-Kazooie, I think, long enough. Next up, we got a Homer Simpin. I don't know what materials all of these are on. Like, something got screwed up. Must be some kind of variation of the Skin Shade 4 material I was using. Reapply these materials really quick. The original 2D concept here is by Max Grecki, if you guys are familiar with him. So this was in like the first quarter of what did I say, 2017? Right around there, yeah, this is still 2017. I believe that I have an image of this somewhere. Here he is. Here's the render plus comparison of the painting. Again, Max Grecki. I would highly encourage you guys to check him out. But yeah, the exercise here and objective was to stick as close to the original 2D concept as I possibly could. Let me grab that again. So this is when I was starting to get into, I was doing a lot more work translating a lot of 2D stuff to 3D for production, and I wanted to kind of like level up my skills and try to make something as accurate as I could. There are some definite differences in terms of accuracy on this sculpt. This was something that was pushed really, really far, and I was definitely struggling with that at the time, but I had fun working on this guy, and in terms of stuff that I would change, it would just be to get a little bit closer to the accuracy of the 2D concept. But a lot of the stuff in like the mouth, I should stop closing that so we can continue referencing it. A lot of stuff like here in the mouth, I found out that, you know, 2D artists cheat, and I have to figure out how to make this work in 3D, which was a lot of fun, and I still enjoy doing that to this day. ZBrush streamers gotta look out for each other. Absolutely, man. For sure. Banjo ones are cute. Well, thanks, Becker. Wouldn't mind if you want to tell us any news about that course with some live tutorials. Still working on it. That's all I got for right now, Francisco. Dang, that's really close, says Tatami. Yeah, in terms of, I can't or you know what? We could like do a see-through mode or something, since the other one is flipped there. And the perspective's a little bit warped here because it's not in the center of the screen, so I'll just turn off perspective, and we'll try to line this guy up. Oh, I'm having some trouble, it's lagging. And there's some scale and angle differences here. But yes, the perspective isn't turned on because if you guys don't know, in ZBrush, when you use perspective and then you move something off from the center of the screen, it starts to skew and warp your object. So that won't be quite as accurate. But yeah, you know, pretty close, I would say. But yeah, that's what I was doing at that time, trying to work on translating those 2D concepts into 3D and just kind of playing around with that stuff. I have another example of that we'll look at here in a moment. But here is another thing from 2017. It is a Toadette. And there are some strange materials going on here. But I think I have a render of this somewhere. I was just trying to create a custom amiibo. Obviously, this isn't something that could stick to the stand there. But I had a lot of fun working on this. And if you guys do have any amiibos, they often do like this clear plastic for the connective areas of characters' feet. I have like a fox. I think I have a fox and a falco back there, and they're like both dashing, and they're dashing and they're running really fast. They have some like clear plastic that helps connect them to the base stand. But yeah, this was just something quick. I think I did this in a day, just to kind of show you guys some of the stuff that I was doing back then. Some more stuff in kind of the same vein, same style. Stay as close to the IP as I could. I think the only thing, like if we want to look up some images of Toadette, I love how the first autocomplete there was costume. I think the main thing that I noticed now looking back at this is how big the mouth feels, which I can't remember if live booleans were out at this time or not. I'm gonna guess that they were. But I probably just made the object that subtracted from that mouth a little bit too large. In terms of like proportions and everything else, I feel like the face is just off a little bit in general, and maybe the shape of the head is a little bit, it could be a little bit more round. It doesn't feel quite as round as the shape that I'm seeing here. Not as cutesy. But yeah, a lot of fun to work on. And I would love to, I never printed this. I was thinking about doing some prints of this. I think it would be a lot of fun, but I just never got around to it. Zofo asks, how do you recenter a sphere in ZBrush? So if you move it to the left and want to put it back at the origin without using undo. So if you have an object in ZBrush, sphere, square, cube, whatever you got, doesn't really matter. What you can do, first of all, in your geometry palette, scroll down here and look at your size and position menu. That'll give you some more information about your object. You got this position slider here, so if I move this to the left or right or up or down, this will update. So now we're looking at the X. You said left. I don't know what you're looking at in 3D space. That could be anything, so just try to figure out how you need to recenter that and type in that X position and set that back to 0. Another way that you can quickly do this, if you have something that's like super out of whack here, and you got all these crazy different values, in deformation, you can click on the Unify button, and that'll put it back at the world space 0, but it will also set its scale to 2 units cubed. So if you have something that's scaled up a little bit and out of position here, and you click on Deformation Unify, it will make it at the center of the world and at the scale that ZBrush works best at. I can't help but think of your Bowser whenever I see her now. The Bowser Jr. character, maybe. Which I was thinking about opening up. I might have him somewhere. I like him a lot. He's a fun dude. There are some things that I would change on that, though, obviously. Much like with Toadette. Any other questions before moving on? Beckert says, I accused my wife of being a 2D artist cheater today. They cheat all the time. It's true. They're all cheaters. Cheat that perspective. Make things that just aren't possible in 3D. It's rude. It's rude is what it is. A complex blobby shape in ZBrush. That's right. Humor Robot. What's going on, man? Anything else? I don't think so. Cool. So this is at the end of 2017. And the original artist for this is Corey Smith. Definitely go check out Corey Smith's work. This was something a little bit more in a painterly style that I wanted to experiment and play around with. Obviously, we got Batboy here. But yeah, I think the initial thing that I would like to change on this, thank you, Mick Nasty, for the follow, I appreciate it. I would like to paint in probably some rim light. I believe I ended up painting over this in Photoshop to get some of that rim light. Where'd that go? So I think I hand painted over top of this in Photoshop. So I cheated, guys. I cheated in 2D. I'm a 2D cheater as well. But yeah, he was a lot of fun to play around with. If I remember right, I did this like in a day or two. I did some projection painting so that I could get the textures to be a little bit more accurate. But whenever you do that, you get a lot of skewing in paint, so there's a lot of cleanup that needed to happen there. But yeah, you know, something pretty simple, a lot of fun. I wanted to try something in a different style, and yeah, just kind of some more experimentation towards the end of 2017. Humor Robot, or Doom Arts, thank you for the follow, appreciate it. Welcome, how you doing? Humor Robot asks, trying to start rigging a face, could you help me on how much rig bones are optimal on a face? Exactly 2 rig bones are optimal. You're asking the wrong person. I don't do a lot of facial rigging. I don't do a lot of rigging in general. Yeah, I'm a digital sculptor, so I do a lot of 3D modeling, high resolution stuff, more stuff for physical products. But maybe somebody here in chat is a little bit more educated and can provide you with some nice links and references. Which, by the way, feel free to share some links in chat, guys. Texture on the Batman rocks. Well, thanks. Thank you, Beckert. Appreciate that. And Julie's art. In terms of corrections, like I said, I would definitely like to fix the hand-painted nature of the rim light that we see on that finished boy. But also, from the profile, I feel like a lot of this starts to fall apart, and there's definitely some work there that could help to fix a lot of that. I was kind of in that stage where, you know, you're working off of a single reference image, and you don't have a lot of reference to go off for the profile. By the way, Corey Smith has a bunch of other characters in this style that are really cool. You should absolutely go check out Corey Smith. But yeah, I don't know. There was a lot of corrective things that could have been done here to fix the profile, fix the depth. This gets really boring as it wraps around, but luckily, you know, it was only going to be seen from the front. I was trying to create something in 3D that looked like the 2D image. But if I were to go back and redo a lot of this, oh, look at that, we got some more projected face on that. Always got to hide faces in the necks of my characters. It's my favorite thing to do. But yeah, there's definitely a lot that we could do to really take this to the next level. And this silhouette feels like really awkward here. If anybody sees this, it's very flat in the front, whereas we'd want to pop this out a little bit, give him a little bit more of a chest, and not have the back shooting back so far. But yeah, pretty fun character. Tried something in a new style. Let's move on to 2018. Year of our Lord, right? Or actually it's 2019 now, but that's okay. The last year. We're just gonna look at 4 quick sculpts that I did during the last year, and then I'll be happy to answer any questions about these as well. So these are a little bit more recent. This was a Bowser Jr. Sculpt. I found a reference online for this, and I never found out who the original 2D artist was. I might be able to find that reference if I dig through some folders really quick, if anybody's interested. But yeah, I don't know. I think this was part of a daily series that I did. I definitely gotten up to a point where I was a lot faster at sculpting. Some of the things that I would definitely change in this at this point, the first thing that really sticks out to me, 2 things that really stick out to me immediately. The hands are really messy and don't really fit the style. I feel like I could like blockitize these out, just block these out a little bit better, square them off and not have quite as much definition as I do, and just kind kind of reshape these. I'm just doing this really quick with a pinch brush and a move brush. Just trying to square them out a little bit more and try to get, you know, a little bit closer to the style of the rest of this dude. I feel like we got a little bit away from that here in the hands. So that would be something that I would definitely do. And I would definitely redo the way that I dynameshed these hands, because I made it in such a way that if I wanted to come back and change these at any point for any reason, if you're ever doing any production work, this is not a good idea. Because if you sculpt this up and then somebody says, a client says like, oh, we want the hand to be open or holding something. It's like, well, crap, now I have to redo a lot of this, unless you have an older version where the hand was open. But I do not. I just have, I think, just this old one file from this. But yeah, fixing a lot of stuff in the hands would be the one of those first things. Another thing that I would fix is the depth in the face. If we just turn off all our poly paint and look at just the sculpt here, a lot of the form in the eyes is really lacking the depth that I would like it to have. If I were to 3D print something like this, I feel like this transition here would just blend together. There's like hardly a hit there at all. So really working on, that's gonna mess up the other eye, but really work on just getting a little bit more of some depth there between those two transitions, as well as fixing some of the areas here. It looks like stuff isn't really connected up too well, but that's all right. You know, for a daily, I'm pretty happy with this guy. As well as, you know, transitioning some of these forms into the face a little bit better. Looking at the silhouette, I feel like this is a pretty just weak shape, which sounds like something a fine artist would say, but just like the way this transitions, I feel like we could make this silhouette-wise come down and maybe come out a little closer to a 90-degree angle. So right now that feels just like it's a little bit in between right now, from like, okay, let's blend it all the way in so this is a smooth transition, or like a hard transition of a 90-degree angle. Right now that just feels like it could be pushed a little bit further. There's some other like sculptural areas that aren't done very well, like back here in the shell. I could really clean these up into separate objects. The way that I actually did this, I remember doing this, I used a slice curve brush and just ran through all of these different shapes, slicing them up and then splitting out the objects into these different pieces. If I redid this, I might do it in the same way, but I think I might even Z-model something like this just so I could get some like really clean selections in there. You can see how some of this gets a little messy. Lines aren't super straight in a lot of areas, but yeah. And obviously there's all those cut up pieces in there that you can see individually how those work. Batman skipping chest day. That's right, it's just a flat plane there. Whoa, what's going on, Tom? Tom the beard guy. Or actual body day. Right. Skipped body day, chest day, leg day, arm day. Almost every day except for neck and head. Is head day a thing? Is neck day a thing? It's a real question. Ever 3D print a character that won't stand up because of the balance? That's actually something I also wanted to mention about this dude. A character without a base. I have, yes. I actually have a 3D print of Fox McCloud fused with Space Dandy. Where is he? This dude here. I tried to make this in such a way that the rock would help add some support to him, just because he's a little bit top heavy for the scale that he's at, and he doesn't have much supporting him. So if you guys know Fox McCloud and Space Dandy, there's a little fusion of them. So what ended up happening was I had this sitting on a desk. It does stand up on its own, but because it's a little top heavy, what happens is that it would tip over and it actually broke the tail off. So I super glued the tail back on, set it back up, and then a week later I bumped into my desk, fell over, and the arm, or the hand with the gun broke off. And I was like, okay, this is getting kind of annoying. But yeah, yes I have. I have printed things that don't stand up correctly. For something like this, I think this would have a lot of trouble standing up on its own. The footprint is something that you got to think about a lot when you're making stuff like this. Comparatively, just the angle where the weight of this character mainly is, it's hard to say, but it would probably tip back a little bit without running any kind of simulation here. Just looking at this from my experience, I would guess that this is going to have too much weight in the back end, too much junk in the trunk, and he would probably tip over backwards. So if you were to 3D print something like this, I would probably set him up with a stand that you could either fuse to his feet, something small. Maybe you could come up with an organic solution, like I did with the rock with the Space Dandy Fox combo. Or what you could do would be to create a stand, create some really tiny pegs, and then create a negative peg hole in the bottom of the feet, and then you could just slot that in there and connect that up. That's probably one of the better solutions for something like this that I would aim for. Space Dandy, yeah! Not many people, I feel like, have seen Space Dandy. I love me some Space Cowboy. Let's see. I guess he means that even realistic shapes can be lifeless, so both realistic and unrealistic shapes should be expressive. You know, there's this thing called artistic anatomy, and artistic anatomy follows the rules of anatomy, but it also exaggerates certain areas to make something a little bit more visually appealing. I don't have any, super great references that I can pull up off the top of my head very quickly, but if you find like an anatomy sculpt that you really like, that's really appealing and looks really nice, it probably cheats anatomy a little bit in certain areas to make something a little bit more of an appealing shape. There's some really interesting, like, nice comma shapes that I often see in deltoids. There's a lot of room for improving on my dumpy potato body. All right, let's move on to something from, when was this from? About the middle of last year. Give this a second to open up. I might need to close. I'm gonna close. Or you know what? Here, let me just close ZBrush really quick, just so we're not getting this huge file here, and then we'll look at our next sculpt. Every creature / humanoid, or like that, has a basic reference of anatomy. Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure what you're trying to say there, but yes. There's some anatomy references, or their anatomy is used even for stylized characters, right? Proportions are important, and understanding form is also important. How do you know when to include escape holes on a 3D printed character? Meaning, is it not possible with some characters because of the shape? Here, we'll use this maybe as a reference. It does obviously, yes, depend on the shape of something that you're creating. If something is too thin, you might not be able to hollow it out. Or if it's a shape where we have like the head here, where you have some kind of open cavity or something that pulls in really tight into here, that might make it so that you can't hollow out the object just because it gets too thin in there. It just kind of depends on the object. There are a lot of reasons why you might not be able to do an escape hole. The surface from which you want to escape the material from could just be too small. Your escape hole might not be able to be large enough, etc., etc. But yes, there are absolutely instances where that simply just is not possible. The original 2D concept artist is escaping my mind. It is Danny Cruz. So everybody, go give Danny Cruz a follow on ArtStation. Here's the original 2D concept, and here is my digital sculpt. So we can do like a quick like see-through mode there. In terms of critique and things that I would change on this, I think I would try to get a little bit more. I feel like my 3D sculpt feels a little bit less expressive than the 2D illustration here by Danny. And if I were to redo something like this, I would absolutely want to get in here and try to make the like squash and stretch going on in the head a little bit more exaggerated, and the like kick out and tilt back of the body maybe even a little bit more exaggerated. But other than that, I think just in terms of accuracy, there are some things that could change. Some things definitely weren't possible here in 3D that are in that 2D illustration, as all 2D illustrations suffer from that kind of thing. But yeah, he was really fun to work on. Some of you may have seen me work on this earlier this year. It was only about a little over half a year ago, I think. But yeah, he was a ton of fun to work on, and I'm really happy with the way he ended up turning out. Crazy cute design. It is absolutely. Danny Cruz, everybody, go give Danny Cruz a follow. But yeah, we can just look at this sculpturally. We turn off all the poly paint here and all of our textures as well. Do that really quick. Oops. I have just a couple texture maps set up here that we will toggle away. And my head disappeared. Alright, so sculpturally, I think just in terms of 3D form, for an example, I think it was Zofo that was asking about the escape holes. So for something like this, there was a lot cheated in the 2D reference, so there was a lot that I had to kind of figure out for the sleeves here and for the arms. This is something that I often do though, just kind of thinking about 3D printing in general. You know, you want everything to be solid and watertight, and one way that you can start thinking about that is for stuff like clothing, or for specific areas that might be more thin than would allow for 3D printing. What you can do is you can cheat that a little bit by giving it the illusion of thickness, and then just like a little bit into that. Sleeves are often an example that I reference for something like this. You can taper that shape in and then make it so that if we look at just half of the inside here, it's not actually, you know, a thin piece of fabric like you would expect it to be. It's just kind of cheated a little bit to make it look like it is. So just pushed in a little bit and then cleaned up along the edge to make a nice appealing shape like what we have there. But yeah, there's a Froggy boy. I believe if I remember correctly, I did a lot of stuff in here with, I think I used live boolean on the eyes there to like slice out that little shape there and make that physical, so that I could poly paint in there really quick. Other than that, yeah, I don't know. There's probably some stuff I would like to change in the pants. I don't really like the way that I tackled these, and the shape there in general feels like it could maybe be tapered a bit more up to the top. Mine feels a little bit too parallel here, even though it's not parallel, but I feel like I could have pushed that a little bit further. But yeah, there she blows. Froggy boy, or gal, our Froggy wizard. I would love to see a robot watering a giant egg. I believe Julie is working on that. That's what, yeah, Julie, that's what I'm doing. That's funny. It's a cool, cool character. I like that a lot. All right, here is next up in 2018, just last year. This was in October. And I actually make sure I have the right version here. This is, if anybody here follows me or has been here before, you guys have probably seen this character and maybe seen me work on it a little bit on stream here recently. But this is, what's her name? I can't even, Domino from Deadpool 2. And the original concept artist is Dino. If you guys don't follow Dino, go check out their work. Here's the original 2D concept. This thing is pushed to hell and back, which is why I chose to do this concept. This is a crazy concept. I love this character, I love this concept, but there are things in here that are so pushed, it's absurd. Different shapes are used in the legs, like this leg is just completely different shape than this one. This arm is pushed completely different than this one. There's a lot of things here that are just cheated beyond reason, like floating parts and pieces, like this knife is just floating on her leg. There's a lot more, but I tried to rein that back in a little bit and tried to make as much of that work in 3D as I possibly could. So we can rotate around and try to make this a little bit more physically possible in 3D. So it's a very crazy pose, a very difficult pose. I spent a long time on this, struggled with it a lot, but I'm very glad that I chose to do this concept, and I definitely learned a lot from this. I really enjoyed working on the hair, getting to do some of these interesting shapes up here. I experimented with the hair for quite a bit before I landed on the shape that I have right now. In terms of critique and changing a lot of stuff in here, I would probably... This was something that I had to sculpt asymmetrically from pretty much the get-go, just because the pose is so extreme and there are so many different shapes. If I were to redo this, I'm happy with the way that I pushed away from how exaggerated a lot of the form was in the 2D concept. But if I were to redo something like this, I would probably attempt again the same character, but this time sticking to how crazy and how pushed this was, and just say, screw it, I don't care if it doesn't work in 3D, I will also cheat it and try to get some of these even crazier shapes going on there. But yeah, like I said, I really enjoyed working on this character, and if we don't have any questions about it, we can move on to our last character of 2018, which I'm sure many of you have seen. Francisco says those are almost new. Well, that's the whole point. We started in 2014, and now we're all the way up in 2018. We've been going for an hour and a half here. I remember seeing this on Twitter. Those are some amazing curls. Well, thank you. Appreciate that. Yeah, these were a lot of fun to sculpt. Ooh, we only got a few of them there. But yeah, some little cinnamon buns there. I had, you know what? I should actually, just so you guys can see a little bit of the development process on this. I don't know if everybody has seen this, some of the earlier stuff here. I don't think I posted any whips on my ArtStation for this, so if you guys have seen that on there. I occasionally posted some work in progress images as I went, but let's see. This was the first version of that face that you see here. So when I start making a face, we were actually just making a face yesterday on the channel. So if you guys were here for that, you know, start off working on those primary forms, and a lot of what I'm trying to do in those early stages is just get all the parts and pieces in there as quick as I possibly can. The mouth of this character was huge, and I was just trying to figure it out. It was a lot. It was a lot. This character was just a lot in general. But there's one, and then kind of the evolution of that as it started to shape up a little bit more. But as I did this, there were some harder forms in the face. Remember we talked about planing out the face yesterday if you were here, or when we looked at that the girl that I had with the necklace around her. Those harder shapes in the face tend to make something look more robotic or masculine, so I ended up softening a lot of that out, as well as cleaning up a lot more of the form in the face in general, and just trying to push more away from that boxy shape that we see, and get to something a little bit more appealing. But yeah, here's another work in progress image, a little bit closer to what we see here in the final. But yeah, I think that's all I have to say about this gal here. I used pretty much everything on this. I used live boolean, insert multi-meshes, custom brushes that I always use all the time here on stream. I made some new brushes. It was a lot. This was a lot. Synonym buns, very nice. Some synonym. Alright. And our final character of 2018, up to present. If you guys haven't seen him yet, or if you're brand new here, it's my Android 17 Sculpt. The original 2D concept is by GopGap. This guy was a ton of fun to work on. I worked on pretty much the entire thing on stream. If anything, there was maybe like a few minutes here and there that I did off of stream for like clicking a quick Z-remesh or something like that. But pretty much all of this is on my YouTube channel. If you missed any of that, there is a playlist, YouTube/Follygon, Android 17, 15 videos or so, going through like I said, the entire thing. I even show off the render process for that. Again, the 2D artist who's the creator of the original concept is GopGap. There's the final render, by the way. Final render there. GopGap is an amazing concept artist. I highly encourage you guys to go check out their work. Give them a follow. And yeah, if we have any questions about this, I can talk about that some more. But other than that, I'll just talk a little bit about the process for those who are new here. Actually, for this character was during a period when I was doing some blockouts of a few different characters, just like talking about the process for blocking out a character and why it's so important, and all that good stuff. And eventually it went from blockout to more and more refined. Some people in chat were just saying, oh, you know, just finish it, just keep working on it. So that's what we ended up doing. We just kept working on it until we finished him and got him to where he is now. But in terms of things that I would change on this is pretty recent and fresh in my mind, but there's still some things that, you know, nothing's ever finished. If I were to go back and do some more work on this, I would probably, just from the profile, like to work on these legs a little bit more, because the leg feels, it doesn't really feel grounded enough for me in some of these areas, just like the way this shape turns so early. I feel like there's some more. Let's see, I don't have subdivs down here anymore. But sometimes, you know, eventually you got to get to a point where you say enough is enough and good enough kind of is for now. But there are a few changes here and there that I would make there in the legs. As well as the face. In the face, the expression is pretty close. It's not spot on. And then I would have liked to have found a way to make this work a little bit more from other angles. If we can go back here to GopGap, where'd he go? This expression is just, there's a lot of things broken in the face in 2D that we had to kind of figure out. And it works really well from this one heroic render angle, right? But as we start to turn that around, some of that starts to feel a little bit more awkward and broken. I don't think it feels awful, but I think with a little bit more work, you know, if I spent like maybe another day or two working just on this face, I probably could have found some solution and got that feeling a little bit better from some of those other angles. We are 3D artists, right? We got to make things look good from every angle, not just one. But yeah, I think that's it in terms of going through our whole thing, starting in 2015 with this monstrosity on screen here, where we're just experimenting with a bunch of different brushes, trying to figure things out, all the way up to all my old stuff used to be flipped upside down for some reason. I don't know why. I have no idea. All the way up to you know, a lot more polished. That's what we're looking at right here. The face says, "Get that freaking picture already. My face hurts." Nice. Oh, if you look from the left side. Dance fight written all over it for sure, man. Of course, I'm all about them dance fights. Have your characters ever been animated? No, most of what I do is for physical production, so I tend to sculpt that way pretty much all the time. Also, I don't really have the time to sit here and retopo something like this, rig it up, and then have it animated. Mitten Dwarf, Brandon, what's going on, dude? Thank you for the subscription. I appreciate that a lot. How you doing? I know the Mitten Dwarf, personally. How you doing, bud? We're going up through the ages today. So that's it, guys. That is it. 20 here. We'll hand pick. We will hand pick through the ages. 2014. Here we go. Into. Oh no, that's gonna try to open in Photoshop. It's gonna try to open in OBJ. No, don't do it. You're gonna crash. I'll import over top of this. For some reason, Photoshop is my default. program to open up OBJs. Yes. So 2014, guys. 2015, for those that are just kind of joining us here at the end. And then, let's see, 2016, let's do this gal here. Giving that a second to open up, because it's struggling. Zofo heading out. We'll catch you later, man. You have a great rest of your day. Hi, Brandon. This is from 2016, I think I said. Right? So, man, everything is just upside down every which way. And my neighbor's dogs are killing each other. And then we can look at some 2017 sculpts. You'll also notice that these open a lot faster from the newer versions. I got a lot better at optimizing my characters, my files here. So 2017 as well, and then just that final character for 2018 here. Did I skip a year? I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe I did. Here we go. Let's get them all on screen at once. We got 2014, this monstrosity. 2015, little long boy Legiacris. Make him a little smaller. 2016. This scene is very complicated. Here, we will turn on just the face. How about that? And maybe the dress as well, so it doesn't feel so weird. And 2017. Well, bam. And finally, wrapping it up in 2018. So that was a quick look back through, you know, kind of just my past 5 years. I thought it would be fun to look back at where I started and try to critique some of my stuff and talk about, you know, how I've evolved my process and how I've evolved as an artist, and just getting to see some of this stuff. I think it's important to recognize that, you know, everybody starts in the same place. Everybody starts off making absolute trash. You know, you make big old dumpster fires of sculpts, and it just takes a lot of time and practice. I have chosen about like 2 to 4 pieces from each year to show throughout this stream, but you know, also keep in mind that I did a ton more than just those. I sculpt every day. You know, I do as much as I can. So hopefully you guys understand that. And some of these were just kind of handpicked to show a few of the ups and downs throughout the period. Ooh, that's right. That's right, Brandon. You got the follies. You got the follies now. The Kenny McBee, welcome, and thank you, man. All right. Well, I really think that's going to be it for today. I just wanted to kind of go through, try to critique some of this stuff. As long as anybody doesn't have any questions here at the end, which I will answer if we do. But I do want to show you guys real quick, if you are new here or never checked out my stuff before, links down below to my ArtStation. There's a link down below to my Gumroad. You guys have probably heard the spiel before. Gumroad/Follygon. Brushes, materials, base meshes, courses, all the stuff that I use professionally in my work, you guys can check out on there. But other than that, I just want to say thank you for coming and hanging out. I hope that this stream has been helpful for you. And I will see you Friday for our live critique stream. Friday at noon EST. I will not be around tomorrow. If you guys want to get in on the live critiques, all you have to do is shoot me an email to follygon@gmail.com with a ZTool file, and we will critique it live on stream. I think I already have like 2 or 3 things that we're going to look at that people have sent in. So if you guys want to get in on that, send it in now. The earlier you send it in, the better chance you'll have of getting it in on that stream this Friday. I don't think I've asked, but why did you choose the name Follygon? I think we'll save that story for another time. It's catchy. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you for the stream. Humarobot. I've been saying that wrong this whole time. That's okay. And Beckert. And Brandon. That's right. This Friday. Critique stream. Alright. You guys have a great rest of your day, and I will see you then. Toodles.